Hi, this is Steph with Belladonna Dyes, and today we're going to be doing a DNA offset V pattern. For this project, I'm going to start by centering the shirt. So what I mean is the sleeve inside the other sleeve technique. So I'm using a washable marker to mark out the center points, and then I'm going to take one sleeve and tuck it inside the other sleeve. Line up all those seams in the underarm and then along the shoulder. And then finding those marks that I made, I'm going to give them a little pinch and shake the shirt out. And then you lay one side of it down and smooth out all the wrinkles. And then you bring the other part of it on top. So it could either be the back side or the top side. I think it just depends on which direction the shirt is going. Once you have the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt together, you want to make sure everything lines up. Get all the wrinkles out of the shirt, and then we can move on to the next step. So that looks pretty good, about as good as it's going to get. So next, using my yardstick, I'm going to mark out my pattern. So I start down at the bottom and I have the yardstick going up over the shoulder, and I'm just going to draw a straight line. And then I'm going to mark out other lines at about every 4 inches. That's just a good number that works for me. You can do any widths you want. You don't even have to mark out your pattern. You do whatever you want to do, but this is how I like to do it. Next, you want to pleat along these lines, making those lines as straight as possible. And I'd say a good pleat size for this type of a pattern is about a 1/2 inch, maybe an inch. You don't want to go much bigger than an inch though, because you do want to have like a good pattern, like the DNA pattern. So try to go about a 1/2 inch if you can. For this project, I'm securing it with kite string. If you don't have kite string, you can also use rubber bands. It really is just a matter of preference. And I'll tell you, there is no rhyme or reason as to why one day I will do rubber bands and one day I will do kite string. It just, I don't know, it just really just sort of is like what's ever in the air, I suppose. I usually prefer to use rubber bands because I just find them to be really quick and easy. And this pattern would certainly turn out just as good with rubber bands. When you're securing your project, whether it be with rubber bands or kite string or whatever else you like to use, you want to have good tension, but you don't want to be pulling it so tight that it's like buckling in on itself and, squishing your pleats where it makes some of them pop up and, so some will be tall and some will be short, because for good saturation and a uniform look, you really want your pleats to be all exactly the same height if you can. And, I can look right down the center of mine right now, and, that one pleat is much taller than all the others. It's not the end of the world, but you do want to have them be all the same height. And then just keep working with your kite string. You work from one side all the way down to the other, and then work your way back to the center, and then just simply tie it off with a basic double knot. Now I'm going to mark out my lines for my die placement, and for this project I'm going every 1 inch. That is a little bit large, but that's okay. A 1/2 inch would probably look a lot cooler, but it would also be a lot more work. And I just wanted to play around with this. I haven't done a lot of liquid dyeing lately, so I just wanted to have a little bit of fun. I wasn't trying to take it too seriously. At this point, you could turn this into a wigwag. It would be a different direction, but you could zigzag your die up and down this. You can just do whatever you want. Die placement is the key. So I mark out every 1 inch, and then I used my little ruler to draw on the lines, and now I'm going to flip it over and mark out the pattern on the back. And I do highly recommend that you do this, because once you start to get die on the project, you can kind of lose track of where you're at. Having these lines as a guideline, I just find them really helpful. Now it's time for the fun part. We get to add the die. And for this particular project, since it's going to be an offset DNA, when you're adding your die, you want it to only saturate halfway down through your pleat. Because if you oversaturate it, then it could become a muddy mess with your colors. The whole point of this is to get all of your color pattern on, so like for this one, I'm using Raven Black, Fire Red, Gunmetal Gray, and Silver Lining in a repeating pattern. And I'm gonna go halfway through the pleat with saturation. And then when I flip it over, I'm going to offset it by switching the colors over one spot. And I'll talk more about that when we get there. So really just work on your saturation. Try not to oversaturate the top layer, because you can always go back and add more dye, but you can't take it away. So we have a brief moment here while I'm adding the dye, and I just want to tell you guys what I got to do. So I went down to the DFO family reunion, which it's like a glass blowing event, but some of our favorite, or my favorite anyways, tie-dyers were there for a tie-dye competition. So it was super cool to meet them and just talk to them a little bit and hear their thoughts on tie-dyeing and ask like what got them into tie-dyeing and how long have they been tie-dyeing. And Yeah, I was like totally fangirling out, just like, woo, this is so awesome. But it was really a cool event, and I think it'd be awesome if, there were more tie-dye festival type things or whatever, where like everybody can get together annually and, shake hands and meet. And I don't know who would ever put that on, and I'm sure the people that would, are the big guys, they're not watching my channel, so they don't know anything about this. But I think it would be totally awesome to have like a tie-dye festival every year and get together and just talk tie-dye all day long for a couple of days and barbecue and, listen to music and just have a good time. So anyways, that was a lot of fun, and yeah, it was cool. I let the project rest for about 10 minutes, and I came back and I flipped it, and you can see a little bit of oversaturation with the silver lining. I don't work with it often. I guess it's one of those good flowing colors. But now what I'm doing here with my dye placement is to create the DNA, I'm switching each color over one. So I took my dye bottle and I shifted it over to the other end, and then I'm just going to work my way down like I did on the top side on the back side. So for instance, the gunmetal gray is going over top of the silver lining, and then the silver lining is going over top of the black is going over top of the red, and then the red is going to go over top of the gunmetal gray. It's just everything is moved over one spot. I hope that makes sense. I should also mention about your saturation. It's the same thing on the back side. You really want to only saturate halfway down through the pleats. Now, I do recommend that you check your pleats when you're all done and make sure that you don't have a bunch of white space. I'm not purposely adding white into this project. I want good saturation. So if you do have some white areas, you can go back in and fill in with your dye. I just find that white space in these types of patterns sort of take away from the overall effect. Unless you're adding white as a color, then that's a whole different story. Keep in mind that I have this sped up for time. I am not going this quick with adding my dye. I'm being pretty methodical with it, because you don't want to oversaturate by going really fast. So just always when you're watching my tutorials, keep in mind that things are at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 times sped up. I'm pretty slow when it comes to adding my dye. Once you have all your dye on the project, check inside those pleats, make sure you have your dye exactly the way that you want it, and then you need to cover it. So for this one, I'm going to batch it on a rack inside of a tote, but you could also cover it in like plastic, like a garbage bag or something. I just like to use the tote because now I can take it to my electric blanket. And I like to batch for 48 hours because it's still cold here in Oregon, but at least try to batch your project for 24 hours. For the rinse out, you want to start by using cold water to rinse away any soda ash that might still be reacting within the fabric, and then increase your water up to hot and rinse until the water runs pretty much clear. Now I'm going to be cutting the string, so I'm going to be using scissors, and you just want to make sure you take your time, don't cut a hole in your shirt. And also, you don't want to let the string go down your drain. You don't want to create yourself some type of a plumbing issue, okay? So once you have your water up to hot and you rinse until the water runs pretty much clear, from here I take it to the washing machine and I do however many hot water cycles it takes using Curolon. And Curolon is a professional textile detergent that I get from Dharma Trading Company. And it's usually about 2 hot water cycles because I'm washing many things at once and I want to make sure to get all that loose dye out and away from the shirts. Then I do a final hot water cycle using Millsoft. And Millsoft is a professional fabric softener that I also get from Dharma Trading Company. And I have links for both of those down below in the description box, along with everything else that I use for tie-dye, so go ahead and check that out. And then I'll put it in the dryer and I'll iron it, and we'll come back and we'll see the results. Well, here it is, guys. Here's our offset V after it's been washed and dried. I guess we call these DNA pattern. And I think it turned out pretty good. I find that this is one of those types of projects that's good for anybody, and especially if you're a beginner into tie-dye, because it's a little bit more advanced than just a basic spiral, but it's not hard to do. And you can use any colors that you like. These look really cool in a rainbow pattern, but they do make a nice final product. So overall, I'm really happy with it. What do you guys think? Please leave me some comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, leave a thumbs up and click the bell and set it to all. That way you get notified of future uploads. And remember, have fun tie-dyeing.